going to introduce our speakers. We have James Warnken and RJ Holliday from Clear Vision Communications, and they spoke with us. If you were here at our annual convention, they did a session on web accessibility, and I know that through all the communications meetings that we've had, a lot of people still have a lot of questions about making PDFs accessible, and I know that's kind of one of the final things that a lot of you are struggling with when you're trying to get your website up to the regulations for ADA. So I wanted to get them in here. They're going to go over everything and they can answer any questions that you have. So anyway, let's give a warm welcome for James and RJ. Thank you.
Is your mic on?
Mine is now. Yeah,
All right,
should be good.
good. Awesome.
Is everybody excited to talk about documents? Everybody's favorite thing to talk about at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Friday?
Yeah, we're going to try not to put you to sleep over the next 45 minutes, but it's an important topic. And when we talk about sustaining accessibility, we're going to talk about building accessibility into your document authoring and creation process, which is why we named it Unlocking Your Docs, because we want to make it as easy as possible to make those accessible, because it shouldn't necessarily be as big and scary and complicated as it originally seemed. So appreciate everybody coming this morning. We're going to try to make this as engaging as we can, talking about documents. So
if we're moving fast through this, it is because we want to try to leave as much time at the end for you guys to ask the questions that you have, and then not try to hunt us down in the hallways in between sessions. So
cool. You might have to click on the slide. Yep.
Got it.
So quick introduction. So my name is James Warnken. I am the owner of a small accessibility consulting firm called Clear Vision, where we do pretty much full service accessibility, from consulting to education and training to accessibility auditing and testing against the different guidelines and standards. And really our entire focus is being led by individuals with disabilities. As you can tell from the slides, I've been losing my vision over the last almost 20 years with what's called Stargardt. So I am a part of the community that we're all talking about is impacted by the accessibility of our documents. With Clear Vision, our goal is to meet you where you are and help you figure out how to make accessibility make sense for you and what you actually need, not what we can sell to you. So it's a little bit different approach from a lot of the other players that are in this space working alongside of us, but for us, it's all about impact over anything. A little bit more about myself. Like I said, I've been losing my vision for the last 20 years, so I've gotten to experience almost a full spectrum of vision, learning how to read and write in Braille, navigate with a cane, using large print, using screen readers, using dark mode, using pretty much anything I can get my hands on to try to make everyday life a little bit easier. Before working in the accessibility field, I spent a decent amount of time working in technology, cybersecurity, digital marketing, building and designing websites. Anything to do with technology was right up my alley. And now I get to bring all of that experience into what we do every day, helping make accessibility make sense, whether it's within your documents, it's your website, it's a DocuSign form, it's a mobile application, it's your social media content. We've been on the other side of it where you're at, and now we're just trying to build that bridge.
Cool. And my name's RJ Holliday. So I'm from the Canton area with James. Like he said, in what feels now like a past life, me and James worked together, where actually he was one of my employees at the brand strategy and marketing firm I worked in. This is where him and I both learned about digital accessibility, and those conversations looking at websites, and actually had a client come back to us and say, hey, what are you guys doing to make the website that you're building for us accessible? And we're like, we don't know what you're talking about. James, obviously having skin in the game, was very much adamant with me and my business partner, hey, I want to go learn about this. I want to do everything that I can and assist on the side of accessibility and for the disability community. So About 6 months later, James comes back to us and says, hey, I've got this certification now. I'm talking to people. We have calls with the Pro Football Hall of Fame and General Electric. And I'm like, hold on a second. It's not people who we talk to usually. So about a few months worth of that where we were going to meetings and I was dropping him off at the front door and sitting in those and taking pictures and looking like his father that dropped him off at his big corporate business meeting. I said, I can do a little bit more than this. I can assist you in these meetings. And ever since then, for the last 5 years, James and I have been kind of going arm in arm and tackling things together. I myself am a colorblind individual. I do not associate myself with any other disabilities. And I'm very lucky to know James and be able to be part of these conversations with all of you and help you all in the right direction. So if you've made time to sit in this room with us today and talk god-awful documentation and what it means to have accessible documents, I appreciate you guys all for being here. So,
and there's a lot of familiar faces that we met.
Yeah, I was going to say
that we've worked with, so it's good to see everyone again.
Just very simply for today, the agenda is going to be understanding documents, decisions that lead to accessible outcomes and why that should matter to you and your end user, document creation workflow. So we did our best to make this kind of a step-by-step slide presentation where you guys are going to see this is where we're starting or potentially where we're starting, and by the end, this is where things should be, and I should have a certain level of confidence in the accessibility of whatever it is that I might be creating. One of the big pitfalls that we definitely want to talk about, through our presentation is why we should not be saving accessibility for the very end. I don't know if anybody here, you can, by a show of hands if you want to, how many people like creating the same document twice? Oh, no, go figure. So if we can bake it in from the very beginning, it's going to save you guys a lot of time. And then before questions at the very end, we have a couple of slides with just easy wins, notes that you guys can take home and kind of follow very loosely where, if you are following these, it may not be, conquering everything accessibility-wise, but at the very least, you're at a better point now on the accessibility side than you were before running through that checklist.
The mantra is progress over perfection. So as long as you're moving in the right direction, that's what we're looking for.
So with our document presentation, we kind of like to, start any of our presentations off with kind of a question. This is similar to the game that you play at weddings where everybody's on the dance floor and then you leave as the number goes higher and higher. So by a show of hands, how many people have 10-ish documents that they're currently worried about the accessibility of it? 100, 1,000 or more. God forbid does anybody in here have 10,000 documents that they're worried about. Cool. Well, if we're somewhere around the 1,000 mark, that's more than doable.
It would just be a lot easier if they were all accessible, wouldn't it? That's hopefully what we're going to talk about today. So why do we create documents? There's a lot of reasons we create documents, whether it's for sharing information, it's creating event flyers and program overviews. I snatched the program overview from this conference for our picture here just to illustrate an example of a document. We create it for data visualization, for presentations in PowerPoint. We create documents for a ton of different reasons. So as we talk about the workflow today, this will apply into a lot of the platforms you're using, whether you're a Microsoft Suite user with Word, PowerPoint, Excel, you're a Google Workspace user with Docs, Sheets, Slides, you're using Adobe tools like InDesign, you're creating your program events in Canva. All of those authoring tools have the ability to work accessibility into them. Very few of them are still lagging behind in terms of supporting you as an author in creating an accessible document. So as we go through, just think about some of the different reasons you create documents and the platforms that you use to create them.
Cool. The next very important thing that we want to talk about is why does it matter? Why does accessibility matter? So if you look at any of the statistics, if you Google it, whatever you may do, you're going to get some different answers. But for the most part, it's pretty, consensus across the board that 1 in 4 people in today's day and age is living with some type of disability at any given time. And unfortunately with that, they're not always visible. It's not individuals that you're going to be able to take a look at or talk to very quickly and be able to diagnose, hey, this person is living with a disability. So planning and engineering and creating documents for, every type of individual, regardless of whether you can tell or not, is the end goal and where we want to hopefully set you guys on your document remediation ventures. Sweet. So to kind of break down very easily into the 10 steps that we're going to be going through here, and what the majority of what James is going to be talking to you guys over the next 30 minutes is the document creation workflow that we've put together, which should in theory work for every type of document that you could potentially be putting together. So 1, we want to choose the correct platform. 2, choose and create an accessible template or a theme if that's available or an option in which you are creating your documentation. 3, add basic content and style and structure as you go. 4, add images, multimedia, and visualizations. 5, add the final touches and extras. 6, run built-in accessibility checkers if it's available on those types of platforms. 7, very critical step, never remove the human aspect to checking for accessibility. Run a manual test if you can, even if it is not covering everything. What you can look at is better than nothing. 8, save that document and export it. 9, test it again. Do it again, because inevitably when you convert from one platform to another, something breaks. It's inevitable. And then 10, post, send, and share, and do that with confidence, hopefully.
Yep. So let's start by choosing the right platform. Before we add any content or we start authoring anything, we need to take a second to think about, why are we creating this? Who are we sending it to? How are they going to engage or consume this content? And make a decision off of which platform best supports that, not just from an authoring perspective, but also from an accessibility perspective. For example, if we came up here today and our PowerPoint presentation was in a Google document, that would not be very good. Or another example that actually happened to us recently is one of the auditor's offices that we work with sent me the direct deposit form in an Excel format. A form in an Excel document is not very easy to fill out. So we want to make sure that it matches not only what our goal is as the creator, but also how people are going to use and engage with it, and which one is going to best support that. If it's sharing information, you're probably going to start in something like Word or Google Docs. If it's a presentation, you're in PowerPoint. You could do it in Canva. If you're creating org charts or diagrams or more complex visualizations, you might be in InDesign or something like that. So it's really just take a second to think about it before you open up anything and start just plugging away at putting your content in. It's going to make the rest of this workflow a heck of a lot easier when it comes to adding the accessibility in. So once we know what platform we have, then it's time to start setting things up. And most of the platforms now, whether you're in Google or you're in Microsoft, they come with accessible templates. But most of the time, those templates are going to need customized. They're going to need to be tweaked and modified to fit our branding, to fit how we want it to look and feel. But we also need to make sure that accessibility is a part of choosing that template or creating one from scratch. When we choose our colors, we need to choose accessible, high contrasting colors. When we choose what fonts we're using, we need to make sure that they're readable and that there's enough spacing to where it doesn't become difficult to read between the letters and the words and the paragraphs and the lines. We need to avoid full justification in creating what's called rivers within our content, helping with the general readability and that user experience being able to consume. You can build a lot of the accessibility at this stage. You can set a lot of your defaults that are going to apply throughout your document as you add your content, so you don't have to do it later. If you do it up front and you do it at the template level, every time you use that template, accessibility is already there for you. It's not an added task to your plate. So use your templates as best as you can to set yourself up for success before you get into the content. A lot of our PowerPoints that we use, it's the same structure every time. We've chosen the fonts and the colors, and we just make a copy and change the content out. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. And so now we're going to start adding content. And as you add in your plain text content, your paragraphs, your text, instead of that text just being big and bold, you can actually use the structure and set the different heading levels. Heading level 1 typically is at the top of our document. It's going to describe what that entire document is about. All of your heading level 2s are going to be your major blocks of content. Instead of it just being big and bold, mark it as a heading level 2. Use your headings to create an outline of your content so that it's more than just a visual experience, because you might have somebody who is blind using a screen reader, and big and bold text when you can't see it on the screen just sounds like a regular paragraph. So we want to make sure that as we add in style, we want to make sure that the structure is there as well. When we add in things like lists, we want to make sure that those are actual lists. And there's 2 different types we can choose from, whether it's an ordered list, like numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, or an unordered list where it's the different bullet points or whatever style of design you choose for those. But we want to make sure that they're actual lists, that it's a set of 4 items or 5 items or 23 items. That's the structure coming back into play, not just creating a visual experience. When we add links, we want to make sure that the links have good link text. We don't want it to say click here or learn more or be ambiguous as to where the heck is this going to take me if I click on it. The best thing you can do is go to that link and look at their title, look at their heading level 1, and use that as your link text so that you know that you've built the bridge connecting, that when the user gets there, there's no surprises. A lot of this structure we can build in as we add our content, and naturally we do that, but we also want to focus on our styles and the visual accessibility as well. We don't want to choose low contrasting colors, right? We don't want to mark a heading level 1 at size 12 font and our heading level 2s at size 18. We want to use our size and our color and all of our other settings to our advantage to make the document as easy as possible to understand the flow of it. When it comes to some of our text styles like bold, italics, strike through, underline, the thing to note with that is, to non-visual users who might be using a screen reader or a braille display, none of that matters. So if you're bolding something for emphasis, screen reader's not going to say that it's bolded. If you are showing text that is no longer valid and all you've done is put a strike through, the screen reader doesn't acknowledge that. So when you add certain style properties like those, you need to put at the beginning, if it's bold for emphasis, just the plain text important, so that the screen reader says important before reading it. You can use that, and it doesn't change the visual aesthetic of your document. It doesn't take away from the experience. If anything, it just builds a more robust experience because your content is more clear as to why is this red? Why is this blue? Why is this green? Why is this bold? You're filling in all of those gaps to where the user doesn't have to make an assumption or guess as to why you made certain authoring decisions through your process. So as we add our plain text content, more than likely you're going to start to add images. You're going to start to put multimedia in. You're going to spruce it up. You're going to make it a little bit more enriching and a little bit more engaging. When it comes to adding pictures and images and icons and graphics and all of that visual content, there's a couple things we need to make sure we do. One, we need to put it inline. When you add an image, it kind of is like stacking another piece of paper in front of it, meaning that there's no saying where the assistive technology is going to put that image. You're leaving it open to interpretation. When you put it inline, you bring everything back onto the same sheet, the same layer, and that is going to guarantee that it's read exactly where you want it. Once you have it inline, then we can put alt text on it, generally somewhere between 70 and 150 characters long. And that's not going to necessarily always be a literal description of what that picture is of. that most of the time that alt text should be why that picture is relevant to the content around it. We want to make sure that we're connecting the dots and not throwing a wrench in anyone's experience because we've literally described the image rather than why the image is there and what purpose it is serving. If it doesn't serve a purpose, you can mark it as decorative. The assistive technology doesn't need to pick it up, right? So marking it as decorative or null allows the assistive technology to say, okay, this doesn't serve a purpose. Let's skip it and move on to the next thing that's important. If for whatever reason you're writing your alt text and you get to the end of it and you're like, wow, that's really long, you can add just a plain text paragraph beside or below the image somewhere on the page to give additional context. And the reason that we move it outside of the alt text into actual plain text is because certain assistive technology, when it's plain text, can pause and resume partway through. So if it's a big, long description, it might be a lot to comprehend at one time. Whereas with the alt text, you can't. You have to hear it start to finish from a screen reader. You have to read it top to bottom with other assistive technology. So if it's a complex graphic, like we're talking next slide, a long plain text description allows for that sort of chunking of the information to understand and comprehend rather than hearing it all read at once. So alt text inline and just thinking about the purpose of the image, whether it actually adds to the experience or not. When it comes to multimedia, you want to add audio, you want to add video to a PowerPoint presentation, to your Word documents. There's a couple things we should do. One is we should make sure it has a good title. It shouldn't say like IMG 477621. We want to title it with something that's clear. And then we do want to put alt text on it. That might sound a little bit contradictory because it's not a picture, but the alt text to a screen reader is going to tell them what that video is about before they click play and have to watch or listen to that entire multimedia content to figure out what it's there for. So you can use your alt text to give a little bit of a heads up as to what that's about before the user engages with it. And then once they're engaging with it, we want to make sure that we put our alternatives like captions, like transcripts, like audio descriptions. A lot of platforms now support auto-generating captions and transcripts. Audio descriptions aren't quite there yet, but there's a lot of ways that we can provide alternatives. If you're deaf or hard of hearing audio content, you're going to need captions or transcripts. If you're blind or low vision like me, audio descriptions for the visual composition of that video are extremely helpful in building the same, if not as close to the same experience as possible for our users. Data and visualizations. This has its own slide because these are generally going to be more complex. They're going to require a little bit more thought into how we make them accessible. So this could include like an org chart, a diagram, a bar chart, a pivot table, any kind of data or visualization or just graphic that's not an icon or an image. We can put alt text on it. We can put it inline. More than likely, though, those are going to require some form of long description. If you think about a bar chart, you're looking at it and we are visually drawing conclusions of, okay, this is over a period of time on the x-axis and I can see that it's naturally trending upwards or trending downwards. I'm looking at the pie chart. It's about 50-50 or it's 75-25. Those conclusions that we're drawing from the visual experience, that's what we include in the long description. We shouldn't necessarily be describing every detail or every aspect unless we need to, but we should be sharing the essential information that we're getting from that visual experience through our long description so that a user doesn't need to go through every bar in the chart or every piece of the pie to be able to draw those same conclusions that we're making in a matter of seconds. Again, we're trying to build as close to the same experience as possible. There's always going to be subtle differences in that, but we can fill in those gaps and make things a lot faster and a lot easier and a lot more smooth for different users and their assistive technology when we just take an extra 30 seconds to write a description as to what the visual trend of the chart or the graph is, or how many stops there are in the org chart and how many layers there are, or whatever that might be. And so As we get towards the end of our process, we've added our text, we've added our headings, we've added images and multimedia, we've added charts and graphs and visualizations. Maybe you threw a table in there. Now we get to sort of tying everything together, right? Adding our headers, adding our footers, putting page numbers on, putting watermarks, putting title pages or cover pages. Usually all of this comes at the end. Table of contents. I don't know too many people that start with a table of contents and love going back and changing the page numbers as to where they're at in the document. So usually we leave all of this until the very end. The thing to note here is that we want to continue accessibility. Generally, headers and footers are 50-50. It really depends on the technology, whether it will parse the header or footer correctly. So if you're putting essential information like your phone number, your email, your website, a reference or a footnote in that header and footer, that's where we need to continue to be mindful for accessibility. If it's your contact information, put it somewhere else in the main part of the document, like your cover page. Or if it's a reference or a footnote, put it in an appendices at the end of the document so that it's in more than one place, meaning that it's more likely to be accessible in one of the options that we're presenting our users. So as we get to this stage, we need to just continue to work accessibility into that process. If you add a watermark and you go through your document and it's interfering with being able to read the text, or it's causing issues with an image, we're doing all of that final tweaking naturally. Putting accessibility into perspective here is definitely going to help as you move into getting your document actually ready for that conversion and that distribution. Yeah, absolutely. I think we need a microphone to make sure Zoom
Picks
people
it up.
can hear us. Yep.
Testing.
So when you're setting up a template, I've been using NVDA to do my checks, my screen reader checks. And at the beginning of any check that I do, I find that NVDA is always reading the metadata. What I've been doing is going back in and I've been setting the metadata title and things like that. Is that something that you recommend? Because otherwise it will read a crazy string of numbers and letters and
Matrix.
yes, it's frustrating for, I would imagine, the screen reader user.
Yeah, so that goes back to the title and making sure that your document is set up correctly. Generally, I do that when I save and export, but you could do it when you're setting up the template or when you're using that template in any capacity. Putting a title, setting the language, going through your document properties and making sure that those are all configured to be compatible with something like NVDA or JAWS or Narrator or any of the screen reader options that are out there on the market. You can do it up front with your template, or I personally, like I said, save it until I am ready to export so that I know when I export, it's going to be there for me. So
we'll get into that a little bit more.
Personal preference, honestly, on when you configure the document properties, but similar to the image with it reading the file name. If it's just a crazy string of letters and numbers, that's not very helpful versus a document with a clear title or an image with a clear title as well. But absolutely, great question. So next, the built-in checkers. I'm sure if any of us have Googled how do I make my document, my Word document, or my PDF more accessible, you've probably come across the built-in checkers offered by all Microsoft products or featured within Adobe Acrobat Pro. A lot of tools are now starting to build in these accessibility checkers that can do the basic sweep of accessibility issues, whether you skipped a heading level from 1 to 4, you have low contrasting colors, you have a table without a header row assigned to it. These checkers can pick up a lot of that stuff. And so these are good to use to pick up some of the common accessibility pitfalls and barriers that we might be overlooking or not necessarily thinking about. They are not complete solutions. I'm going to repeat that. The built-in accessibility checkers are not complete solutions to making your document accessible. RJ and I do a training on accessibility testing tools, both automated and manual. These tools at our current state can really only capture about 30 to 50% of the success criteria. So on their best days, they can capture about half, which RJ is going to talk about how we fill in that other half here in a second. But it's important to know that these are going to really only be able to do about 30 to 50% of the heavy lifting as far as did I miss anything. The manual reviews will pick up that slack of that remaining 50 to 80%. The one thing I do want to note here is Google does not yet have an accessibility checker built into it. You have to get an add-on called Grackle Docs, which you can apply into your Google Docs and your Google Slides to do essentially that same checker, but it's third party because Google has not created their own yet. RJ, talk to us about how do we actually test our documents.
Yeah, so like I kind of mentioned in the very beginning and what he reinforced, there is no replacement for the manual portion of testing the accessibility of anything that you're doing. So before you get to exporting, before you send it off to wherever you need to, it's very important to go through those manual tests. And a lot of that is on your guys' end of playing a little bit of an empathy game, putting yourself in other people's shoes and trying to go through those documents in a fashion that somebody who doesn't have access to, let's say, the ability to use their mouse with their right hand and they're only using keyboard functionality, or you're going through it and testing on behalf of somebody who might be low vision or blind, or any type of dexterity issue alongside of that. As a whole, this ensures that anything that what James had mentioned with the automated tests, not only can you validate, because another big issue that we see is in some of those tools, things you can get false positives, things in there they can tell you it's wrong, and when you go back and check it yourself, that's not always 100% the case. This will validate the whatever you found in those checkers and then go far beyond that into everything that those don't check for. And this is the really only and best way to get what that experience of consuming your document, your website, your social media is from the lens of somebody who is looking at it with a disability.
And I want to add here that whatever device you're using, you probably have a keyboard. You can test to make sure that people who might be using a keyboard only instead of the trackpad or the mouse, like RJ said, but every device in this room, every device that you purchase now comes with a screen reader built in. It comes with dark mode. It comes with color filters. It comes with iPhone now has eye tracking built right into their operating system. If you haven't gone into the accessibility settings on your device, I encourage you to do it. There are some incredible features that come built into the devices that allow you to do this manual testing without having to buy anything, without having to do anything different to your device other than toggle something on or check a box. And when you start to sort of open up that experience, it really changes your perspective. I was playing around with iOS 26, if anyone is familiar, the liquid glass debate of this is terrible for people with low, it is. But I was seeing what other accessibility settings they brought in with it, and one of them that I thought was cool and I turned on was for deaf users. You can program iPhones to be listening for certain words, that if somebody across the house yells your name, your phone will actually push a notification that it picked up that word being said. And the reason this is a funny story is I programmed it with my name and a couple other like common words through like everyday dialogue with my wife, and I couldn't figure out why my phone was dying so fast. It like the battery just was like terrible for like those 3 days, and I would pull my phone out of my pocket and it was like 100 degrees. And it was because of that setting. So are they perfect? No. But are we moving in the right direction to where even your devices, even your operating systems and your browsers are starting to build those accessibility features in to make it easier for users to be able to customize their experience, to meet us in the middle? If we've done all this work, users are also putting in a lot of work. Some of that technology isn't free. For example, I carry around a Braille display in my book bag that can run anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000. Users buying that kind of technology, getting to your document, getting to your website, and it not working, is disheartening, it's disappointing, it's frustrating to go through that whole process. So that meeting in the middle is incredibly important to understand, and using what you have available to you can help sort of shape that perspective. Saving and exporting. So adding your title, adding your metadata, setting your language, but ultimately most of our documents we're going to convert. We're going to convert to PDF. We're going to convert it to HTML. We're going to convert it to EPUB. Those are kind of the big three. PDF definitely leading the way. It's the most universal document format. If you've done all of this, when you export to an Acrobat PDF, a tagged Acrobat PDF, it's going to maintain not everything, but the grand majority of it. And we're going to talk about if we didn't do this here in a second, but if you convert an accessible Word document to a tagged PDF, your headings are already going to be there. Your contrast is good to go. Your lists are already formatted and structured. Your tables have everything that they need. It's all going to be there for you. For anybody that has tried to venture into the world of tagging a PDF, yeah, I heard somebody say it. It's not a fun experience. We're going to talk about that in a second. But the main thing to note is that you still need to check and clean it up. It's not going to maintain everything all of the time. It's not 100% because you're converting from one to the other. There's different settings, different features. We're going to have to do a little bit of that cleanup work. If you're not interested in that, you can always consider just leaving it as a Word document or a PowerPoint or an Excel file, XLS, or whatever the format is that you created it in. I believe most of them now have sharing capacities, whether it's a URL, you upload it to Google Drive or OneDrive. You can leave it in that format when you know and you're confident in the accessibility of it.
Yep, and as James mentioned, this very last part, the final review, is the most important. As you guys are converting those, whether it be to a PDF, I cannot even number the amount of times that we have done it to ourselves, or we have talked to clients that are like, I have put together the perfect document, it's ready to go. They're extremely confident in it. They convert it over to a PDF, send it to a client, and they come back and say, half of the stuff on here is missing. It never fails. When you think you've done your best work is when the PDF wants to take all the wind out of your sails and rob you of everything that you've done for the last hour to try to make things accessible. So it's one of the biggest pitfalls that James and I run across on a daily basis, especially when it comes to documents. Going through, taking that extra time, like he mentioned, tagging inside PDF. We know it's horrible. Every client that we've ever talked to and tried to explain to them and have them go through it has, for the most part, turned around and said, "Why would you do this to me? Why have you introduced this evil into my life? And is there any way that I can make it easier on myself?" But a lot of that. Because if you follow the steps and the things that James and I are talking about, a lot of that can be mitigated. Most of that can be mitigated in the initial format that whatever document you're creating is being made. And honestly, if you get to the point where you convert it and that the tagging of a PDF document is the last thing that you need to worry about, and it's not all that bad, you've done a heck of a job.
And so if you're not into a fun experience, if you like things that are tedious and time consuming and frustrating, you can save accessibility until the end when you're in a PDF, and you can go ahead and try to manually set your reading order and try to tag things that are missing, or change the tags and add your alt text. You can do all that in a PDF in Acrobat Pro. It's not very fun. It's not the easiest thing to learn how to do. Even just getting everything set up takes a couple of minutes. So when we save it until the end, we are adding extra effort. We're adding extra work, extra time, extra resources are being allocated to making that accessible. And in some cases, if you want to change the color contrast in a PDF document, some things are not the most easy or even possible to do. You're going to have to go back to your source document anyway. When you have certain structural issues or design changes that you want to make, it's easier to get it all out of the way up front, because then you don't run into where you are sitting at your computer for an entire afternoon just trying to make one document accessible.
Cool. So we'll go through, I will recap some of this, and then hopefully we'll leave at least 15, 20-ish minutes for you guys to ask.
How are we doing on time?
We got 15 minutes, so 20 was a lie.
Sorry.
So easy wins wise. So this is more or less a recap. So if there's things to take pictures of and take home with you as a list, please do so now, or screenshot on your computer. But choosing accessible templates with good contrast, easy to read fonts, and other accessible styles is where we want to be starting. Next, create a clear structure using headings properly. There's different philosophies behind it, but it's very easy. You're staying between 1 and 6 in the heading levels. 1 is describing the entirety of the page. You are sub-breaking your major pieces of content down from that heading level 1. Use real layouts, not spacebar or tab keys. Ensure images and multimedia are in line instead of floating, like James mentioned. If stuff's all over the page, that is not super easy for a screen reader to interpret, and then you're kind of leaving it up to God's will in where people are starting and where they're being taken as they're following along with their screen reader. And then lastly on this slide, ensure all visual content has a proper non-visual alternative. So mainly speaking, alt text is what you're going to run into the majority of the time with your images. But if it is applicable and it's a lot of content, or it needs something to be a little bit more descriptive, having that alternate text below the image describing can go a long way and allow the user to digest that content how they see fit. Continued. Check reading order and tab order. Use built-in features like the insert tables and some of the tools that are at your disposal when you're inside the document creation platforms. Keep animations, movements, and transitions to a minimum. We're not saying we don't like them and they don't make for better documents, but going gung-ho on the images and things flying across the screen on your web page, generally not great, very distracting, or it's going to send some users directly off your page.
We don't want to cause any seizures.
That too. That's also not great. Leverage built-in features like captions on PowerPoint. So like we said, Google maybe be a little bit behind. We personally, for the most part, work in a Google Studio. We know that Grackle is a great option to download as an add-on and use, but a lot of the ones inside Microsoft Suites has been extremely good, and they just keep adding features to it. So we highly suggest, if it's there, don't ignore it. Use it. Even if it's not the best, it gets you a little bit ahead a little bit faster in the accessibility department. Provide meaningful and predictable links so people know what they're clicking on, where they're going, where they're going to be dropped off to, or what you intend for them to fill out if, let's say, it's a form. And then lastly, simplify complex content into simpler formats. Being on the internet sometimes is confusing for most people. The simpler that we can make things, direct people in easier directions, the better it is for everybody that's trying to consume that content.
Cool. And the last thing here before we open it up is when you bake accessibility in, you save time, money, and stress. I heard the sighs and the grumbling over here about the PDF. So we save time because we don't have to do it the same thing more than once. We do it once and we're good. We save money because now we don't have to hire a James or an RJ to come in and do this work for us, or we don't have to pay somebody to come in and follow us and clean things up. And we save a lot of stress because we know that accessibility is already baked in, and whatever we miss is going to be picked up by our 2 sets of manual reviews and our built-in accessibility checkers. There's 3 tiers of review. If it makes it past all 3 of those, I would be surprised. Long story short, accessibility should be a part of every task. It should not be its own task. Whether you're using Jira or whatever project management system, accessibility should not show up as its own line item or task. It should just be a natural part of everything that we do. Whether it's creating documents, it's building websites, it's creating social media content, accessibility has a place in all of that. And so now we're going to open it up for questions. You'll notice on the right side of the slide, there's a QR code. We love working with Laura and all of the different organizations so much that we want to work with more of you. So we're going to do a full hour accessibility consult with anybody who wants to take us up on it, just to talk about what you're currently doing, where you're headed, and with the recently extended Title II deadline, what does that look like for you, so that hopefully next April comes around and you're saying, oh, I got nothing to worry about. Trust me when I say a lot of people waited. Our January to April before they extended it was kind of a little bit of a nightmare. We had
a lot of last minute questions, a lot of, can you help me, God, now, please? Yeah.
I think it was like an average of like 4 to 6 counties, cities, agencies statewide reaching out to us every week. From January to April, we were extremely...
We surprisingly got a few people, or quite a few people, that reached out and said, actually, I just learned about this a couple weeks ago. And the deadline is in 2 weeks, and we're like, someone didn't do their job.
Yeah, and those are ADA coordinators. Those aren't like the marketing people or anything. Like, those are people that's their job. That were like, I had no idea. And to take this conversation, like ADA Title II is obviously huge in this room, but there's also the HSS with like Medicaid funding. May was their deadline with the same requirements for accessibility. So. There's a lot of positive momentum in trying to make things more accessible. We want to just be a part of that, whether we spend that hour showing you some of the tools and resources and just pointing you in the right direction, or it turns into us collaborating and partnering and working together. We're open to whatever that leads to. So feel free to use that. It will take you directly to my calendar to schedule that hour. So it's there.
Please take us up on it.
Please take us up on it. But with the time we have left, I would love to do nothing more.
I think I saw at least a couple questions from the chat, right?
So it's actually just someone asking if the slides will be available, and they are going to be up on Member Connect after the session. So that was the one in the chat so far.
Cool. And question right here.
I have like 70 million questions. So that's not fair to everybody else.
They probably have the same ones, so ask them.
Okay. Well, I'm going to back into this question, so bear with me. So when I schedule social content that has for an event that has a flyer, and the flyer has to be a JPEG because Facebook will not, Meta won't take PDFs. So what I do right now, and if this is wrong, please tell me and I will do a better job, is I typically will use the alt text to say, this is a flyer about, whatever event it was. And then in the text of the post, I'll go through and make sure like any important information that's in that flyer is duplicated in the text. So the person looking at that post isn't losing any information other than they're not seeing like the pretty flyer.
Yeah. No,
is there a better way to do that?
No. The only thing I would say to that is like, if you look, some posts will do like an image description, like at the bottom of the caption or the text within the post, which that's fine. The only thing I would say is like within that alt text, let the user know all of the essential information is in the caption or it's in the comment.
Okay.
Just so that they're not like, I got all of that text. Is there anything more that I wasn't getting? I would clarify that for them.
You're just giving them direction. Other than that, great job.
No.
Yeah, I always feel weird about alt text because I'm like, am I talking to a person? Am I not? Like, I don't know. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. You just don't want to be overly verbose. You don't want to write like a whole novel because again, you can't pause and resume. You got to get it all at once. And that's the longer that is, the harder it is to digest and understand of what date was it? What time was it? Where do I go to register? All of those questions become harder to answer the longer your alt text is. So putting it in the text or in a comment even is a great alternative.
Having like almost permission to make it more like conversational is helpful. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I'll ask one more and then I'll give up the mic.
The other 69,900,000 schedule.
Yeah.
We're going to do that too. We've been doing a lot of our slides in Canva because it just makes it a lot visually like easier and nicer. But know when I download it to PowerPoint, a lot of times it kind of messes all the pretty stuff that Canva does. So I guess I'm curious from your perspective, and maybe the answer is just don't make like fancy PowerPoints, but
Accessibility doesn't need to be ugly. That's another thing that we stress. There is a way to do it.
yeah, and I guess that's something I want to get better at is like, what would you recommend for making your slides accessible? Like, is it better to just create it in PowerPoint and stay in that platform? Or like, what are your recommendations around that piece?
So,
And what are like, I guess kind of maybe this is helpful too. Sorry to interrupt.
oh, absolutely.
Like if you're like, what is the difference between like an accessible PowerPoint and a not accessible? Like, what are the key things that need to be there to make that accessible? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I use Canva a lot. I don't really use it to create presentations, but we use it to create like color palette guides or things that we are a little bit more abstract that if we put them in a Word document, people probably wouldn't pay us to make them. But the issue with going from Canva, you said like it doesn't keep everything. Even if the visual experience is different when you convert it, the accessibility is probably also very different. The biggest issue that I've discovered when converting from Canva to PDF to PowerPoint to is the reading order. So generally, the structure is halfway decent. You might be able to read it in Canva. You can put alt text on your pictures. And a lot of that does get preserved, but like the order in which things are read, it kind of seems completely random. So a lot of times, like when you convert from Canva to PowerPoint, you're going to have to clean it up again visually, but within the review tab in the check accessibility, there is an order option where you can manually like drag and drop of what's 1, what's 2, what's 3, what's 4. I would check that on every single slide if you're converting from Canva to PowerPoint, just to make sure that the title is the first thing. The paragraph on the left is the second thing. The image on the right, the QR code is the third thing. The text underneath of it is fourth. Manually setting your reading order, whether it's in PowerPoint or it's in PDF, at least the user is going to get the content in the right order. It's going to make it make a lot more sense, even if it might be lacking some of that structure of a heading or a paragraph or a list. At least they can get it in the order that you want them to consume it.
Hey, James, I actually think that we might have someone who's figured it out.
They aren't ready. Share because it's really exciting. Like I literally did a dance in my office. In the newest update of Canva,
I'd like to hear.
they are allowing you in the design side to adjust, retag. You can adjust the readability order. You can, and like I tested it, and it's a little not intuitive because it has to be backwards because it must be when it exports. But I've tested it, and I didn't have to make any changes once I exported it as a PDF.
I know what I'm doing this weekend.
I mean, I Googled it and like it's brand new in this newest update.
Okay.
But they must have gotten some feedback because the remediation was forever. Like it really did make a huge difference.
A lot of companies get a lot of emails from me. So
Thank you for that. No, that's awesome.
I had the same thing. I was working in Canva on a presentation this week, and I was in there and I was doing those things, but it got hung up when I tried to move my top level heading above a picture, and it would take the picture and it would turn it upside down and it would fill the entire screen. So beware. I don't know that it's entirely foolproof.
everything comes with bugs.
Cool. You've been patiently waiting.
Okay, so my question is a follow-up to Anna's first question about alt text. Just this morning, I posted our newsletter for our activities on social media. And when I was adding the alt text, I mean, the images that I was sharing were pages from the newsletter, and it's just text. So I put a description saying, this is an image of page 1 of our newsletter for to read the entire newsletter. And I put the link to our website where it was posted in an accessible format because there is no way to put all of that text there. Is that an acceptable
way to handle alt text for an image of a lot of text.
Was the link in the alt text or in the caption?
It was in the alt text. I typically don't do it in the caption.
I don't think there's a way for anybody to actually click that link to go to the newsletter. I would either put it in the caption or put it as a comment on the post of like, read the full newsletter here with a full link to it.
And then I believe you can pin your own comment to the top of that list. So even if people you get a ton of comments on it, yours with that link won't get pushed to the bottom then.
Okay, so either do it as a pinned comment or in the caption.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
And with newsletters, just a sort of aside on that, when you send an email newsletter, most of the time that's also not going to be accessible. So I don't know if you've ever noticed on some newsletter, they say like, view this on a web page. Creating a page in your website with all of that content as well gives you more control of it, where you can set headings and alt text. And so it may be worth it to like copy or extract all of that content and put your newsletter in your website, where you have full creative control over the structure and the semantics and the style of it, to provide that as an alternative if for whatever the reason the newsletter itself is not accessible. Email accessibility is a little bit quirky. One of the big things with emails is like with your email signatures, a lot of people do like cards that has like their picture and their phone number and their email and their website all within a card. You can't put alt text on that allows somebody to call you, to go to your website, and to email you all at the same time. So images with too much going on and too much functionality is a little bit complicated when it comes to emails.
Yep.
They haven't figured it out yet.
I know I saw the microphone go back there, and I know I see you raising your hand here on the right-hand side.
So if I can jump in real quick and ask a question. We put our board documents up each month from our board meetings. As part of that, we have financials from an Excel file that are turned into a PDF. Any tips on making all of that information accessible?
Sounds like a nightmare.
The meeting minutes, are those coming from Word, I'm assuming? Okay, so those you're probably good, because that's just a lot of plain text, right? There's not very much, you're not adding pictures from the meeting to your meeting minutes or anything like that, more than likely. The financials converting to Excel to PDF, it really depends on how you set up that Excel workbook or that Excel worksheet. If you have a bunch of empty cells between like the line items and the dollar amounts, just for visual purposes, you might have a lot of blank in between there that somebody will have to go through to get to it. That is kind of a case-by-case basis when it comes. I generally don't convert from XLS to PDF, just because it's making an Excel document accessible is hard enough. Cleaning it up in a PDF is also not very easy. Generally, I would opt for like an HTML option over an Excel workbook if I'm sharing information like that.
Yep, in middle in the back.
It's not impossible. It's just not very fun.
I'll make this fast. Headers and footers. Is it better to have them be a flattened JPEG and you have the alt text, or is it better to have it actually be real text that's embedded or placed into Word?
Real text.
Real text is always, regardless if it's a header or footer or not, if you have the option for real text, try to default to that.
There's a WCAG success criteria, 1.4.5, images of text.
I don't know how he remembers that.
That says avoid images of text unless you can. Because real text is universal. It doesn't matter what screen reader or what assistive technology you're using. Real plain text is always going to be parsed properly. So, and you may not be able to get to the header or footer, but whoever can will be able to read that.
Yep. And then I think one other question over here.
Okay, real quick. You mentioned the manual checks and the built-in checker only catching like 30 to 50%. Is there any additional accessibility checkers that you would recommend?
So I will have to get the link, Laura or team. If I send a link, like links to resources, is there a way to distribute those, or should I just exchange a card? There is a website provided by the W3C. It's a list of like 119 accessibility testing tools. Some are automated, some are manual. Most of them are for websites and applications, but there are
A subset.
like there's a whole side panel where you can filter, like if you just want documents. I haven't looked at that list of what tools are in there, but that might be a good place to look to see if there are any additional ones outside of the built-in ones. Another thing, hopefully I don't scare everyone when I say this, but AI has come a really long way. Copilot being integrated into Microsoft, you can generate images with alt text with Copilot. Like you can leverage AI in certain ways to assist with accessibility. Again, it's just like the checker. Don't rely on AI to do everything for you. You can't remove that human aspect. But between the W3C tool list and having access to either Copilot in Microsoft or Gemini inside of Workspace, more than likely there are tools out there. We just haven't used them because we opt for the manual check because that's a lot more thorough.
Cool. I think that got everybody. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thanks everybody.